That's a figure that Michael O'Donovan in the previous paper would have talked about that was achievable on beef farms. At the moment, the national average is about 4.8 tonnes, and we see huge potential to increase that. And my paper then went into the tools that beef farmers can use to achieve that extra tonne of utilisable grass per hectare. And we see these as a number of valuable tools that the farmers, they're grassland management tools that the farmers use, they can start to achieve that extra utilisable grass. So the tools then are looking at, first of all, going into the right pre-grazing cover, and what we mean by that is the right height of grass to be going into, and that in a lot of cases a lot of beef farmers are going into significantly higher covers of grass than they should be going into, and really I suppose in layman's terms we're talking about not going into much more than 8 to 10 centimetres of grass. That's the first thing. And then by virtue of the fact that you're going into lower covers than you normally would be, you're also coming out leaving less grass in those fields. We're grazing those covers down much tighter as well. So instead of leaving behind 5-6 centimetres of grass, for the first couple of rotations you might be only leaving behind 3.5-4 centimetres of grass, and as the rotations move on into the year, moving that up maybe to 4 to 5 centimetres, but definitely not going above that. So you're getting a much higher quality of grass that's gone in by going into lower covers and leaving a lot less, so that the resulting cover coming back then is a better quality grass, and you're growing more grass by doing that. The other thing what we're saying, I suppose the other tools will be that for farms, they need to have a proper infrastructure to achieve a lot of these tools or to be able to use these tools. So having a good rotational grazing system, having good waterways, roadways, having proper reseeding, having a good pK and lime status in the soil to take full advantage of grass. That's all part of the infrastructure. On top of that then, there are a number of other tools. We would look at the autumn planner. We see as early turnout as important, and another figure that was given today was €1.50 extra per cow per day early turned out. And how that's achieved is achieved by starting in the autumn, by closing up fields and paddocks in the autumn. And we have what's called a 60-40 planner. That's another one of what we would call our grassland tools. And that would mean starting to close around the 10th of October, I suppose, in the part of the country we're in today, Kilkenny, maybe a little bit earlier in later growing parts of the country, up say in the northern half of the country. But having 60% of the farm closed up by the 10th of November, and then closing up the remaining 40% between then and housing. And it doesn't mean all of stock being housed on the 10th of November. It means closing up 60% of the farm and another 40. So that's our 60-40 planner. That then follows on 4 months later in the spring with another management tool, which is our spring rotation planner. And that really is about two things, achieving two objectives. The first one is that you get 100% of the farm grazed in the first rotation by the time silage is closed up for closing in early April, and you're back onto grazing. And it's about grazing it tight, and it's achieving those objectives so that you have grass coming back, but doing it in a controlled manner. So it's about getting out early, and the second big objective with the spring rotation is that you have as long a first rotation as possible. So if you can get out in early February and have your first rotation lasting from early February through till early April, that's a 60-day rotation. That gives plenty of time for grass to recover for the first fields that have been grazed in early to mid-February. On wetter, later farms, you might not be going out until late in February or early March, and you may only have a 40 to 50-day rotation, but you still aim to have as long as possible. So that's what another big tool. So really we're looking at having a proper infrastructure, we're looking at proper closing in the autumn with a 60% target planned, we're looking at turning out in the spring to have a long first rotation, not grazing at all and not having a short one, and having set targets. So perhaps having 30% of the farm grazed by the 1st of March, another 30% of the farm grazed by Patrick's Day, and the remaining 40% grazed by in around the 5th to 10th of April. And those are the kind of key big ones that we're looking at here today. Well, Michael gave a very clear figure there today on what an extra tonne of grass utilisable per hectare is worth. It's €90 for a beef farmer. So if you can increase it by 3 tonnes, which is achievable on a lot of farms starting from a low base, that's worth an extra €270 per hectare in net profit, which is significant. What we're saying then is that there is extra profit to be made from utilising more grass on beef farms. We have a number of tools that are successfully being used by beef farmers to increase the grass utilisation, and they would be having a proper infrastructure, having a proper rotational grazing system, having a controlled closing up of the farm in the autumn, where you're looking at 60% of the farm closed by the 10th of November, having a controlled turnout in the spring, where your aim is to have as long a first rotation as possible and graze 100% of the farm, going into proper covers of grass that do not have too much, so you're not looking at going into much more than 10 centimetres, and grazing out paddocks cleanly.